Hello, welcome once again to Dragon Age Vidcast. So this is where I'm going to be updating the storyline for you, the kickoff of Season 1. And we're still pretty low-tech here, no intro type things. But oh well, it's the content that really matters, right? For those of you that have been following it. So let's do that then. Right. So this is the part 2 of Dungeoneer Fighting Fantasy, Advanced Fighting Fantasy by Steve Jackson in Livingston, Fighting Fantasy to Age Conversion. The first one was the Tower of the Sorcerer, where they met Zorton Throg the first time and he got away, and it was only a simulacrum. And this time this is really to hunt him down in Black Sand, and where I decided to place Black Sand here was Rivain, just cause. So the link to my conversion notes, you'll be able to find that in the info below. Also, if I can find a link for you to buy the book at an Amazon vendor, then I'll stick that in. But otherwise, obviously a copy of the book would be extremely helpful, because, in a lot of the places in the conversion notes I'm saying, like the book except blah, 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 blah. Now, in this particular recount as well, saying what the group did, I don't need to go into full detail necessarily, because we're kind of running from the book. So somewhat covering it, and somewhat where the group did its own thing and deviated from the content of the book. Now, those of you that have really got the book, this is going to be like super mega great, and you can see how someone else handled it too. Right, but hey, they had to get there first, right, to kill Zorton Throg. Bit of a problem. And the whole background on this, right, the reason why it's all happened is Zorton Throg in my Dragon Age world is 358 years old, and yeah, unnatural life, right? And hey, he's only the Damus Archon apprentice. Jeez. Right, and he is a Tevinter Magister, so he's very much the old style, into the old gods, and he's learnt a way to control the Darkspawn, to command them. And so, from a Grey Warden point of view, the threat is, if there was another Blight, and possibly could be another one, that you imagine him leading the Darkspawn, and making the situation even worse. This guy is really needs to die. He's existed long past his years already. He must be put down immediately. So there was a meeting with King Kalen, and Lady Baranti was there, and the Grey Warden Ferelden Commander Duncan was there, and Logain MacTyr, Tairn of Gwarin, was there as well. So all these big names and people, but the group really weren't so interested in all of that and getting to talk to all of those people. So we didn't put massive emphasis on that, which is kind of a shame. I was prepared to, but you just kind of like, sometimes you listen to your group, you listen to what they are interested in, what elements they want to concentrate on, and they just wanted to get to it, I think, really, more than anything. So there was a bit of discussion there, but basically the background on this is, from a Grey Warden's point of view, Duncan's saying it would be good to have him gone. So Karak, who is himself a Grey Warden, has reason to be going there, and obviously House Baranti are hunting him down, because that was the original mission from her, and of course it makes her look better. And Kalen just thinks it's all very super, a great, wonderful adventure, and it should all be written up into a story, so that exploits like this can live on. How grand. So before they left, a few things came to light. Firstly, not all of the group have been saved from Zorton Throg's dream contract binding thing. So you remember Squire was coming after a lot of them and able to manipulate their dreams. And last time they were in Freeport, they met the newly relocated Lord Aldrich, and he had done the binding severance thing with them. So he'd then basically done a blood magic ceremony to put them into his possession, basically, of a dream contract. You know what? This Zorn Throg's a dreamer, and he's a bit of a problem. Lord Aldrich had done all of the group like this and basically saved them from being watched and manipulated and viewed by Throg, but Amelia hadn't been done, and she was refusing because obviously her Templar self, her training, dictated that she shouldn't. And Lady Baranti had a chat with her and said, "Look, Amelia, you really ought to do this, or he's going to know you're all coming just because of you." And I said, "Well, when we go to bed tonight, he'll know anyway, won't he?" And said, "No, because you're leaving right now," sort of thing. And if for some reason you couldn't leave, then you'd have to be sleep deprived, or couldn't do it. But if Amelia wasn't going to go, then it was going to have to be Costello, the Serpent Man, in her place, also played by Laurie. See, so he decided, no, Amelia needs to go. Fine, all right. My loyalty to House Baranti, and Amelia really is very loyal to House Baranti, will reign over my Templar training. I will undertake this contract. So, Lord Aldrich, who had appeared in Denerim just to do this, on Lady Baranti's request, had done this for Amelia. Now, what's Lord Aldrich doing in Denerim? The blood mage who is helping also to train Karak on the sly. Well, he has set up shop with Lady Baranti, and they have become very close associates, and perhaps more, because they're with each other a lot now, and it seems that Denerim might be his new base of location. So he's ingratiated within House Baranti. Could be interesting. So they had to set off. The idea was to go on a small merchant ship so as to not attract any attention, and for it to be crewed by a capable crew, on the basis that they are taking fruit produce to Rivain, that they won't have any money on them at present, because obviously they're going to come back with money, and they shouldn't really be picked on. They shouldn't get any pirates coming for them because they are such a small operation, and the staff are actually, all the crew are actually spies, basically House Baranti spies, playing those roles, holding those positions, but no real sort of like military types to properly guard it. Obviously that's what our group is for, but they're supposed to try and keep their heads down, all in all. Now, these it's quite a long journey to try and get up to Rivain, and we've placed Port Blacksand on the east coast, about halfway down Rivain. So just an interesting thing to do there. And from fairly early on into the journey, some strange, suspicious things were occurring. So first up, there was a strange sort of flare thing seemed to go up into the sky from the ship, and no one could determine where that had come from. And also, a little time later, someone was seen diving overboard into the water, and now they checked the manifest, and they were one crew member down, and they'd actually brought more cargo than needed on board, and now for some reason, and now they were down to their standard amount of cargo. So maybe something had been snuck on board, or... And then in the end they worked out, maybe it's something to give off like a flare signal. Now, do you remember when they said pirates and people shouldn't pick on them? Well, that was under the case of, unless, of course, obviously, you know, anyone in the group has done anything to, you know, give any of the pirates a specific reason to want to come after them. But, you know, that's not right, right? You wouldn't piss pirates off. They didn't come after you, would you? Oh, dear. Well, there was that one time. There was, you remember. But anyway, we'll get on to that. Yeah. What the flare is for. The flare is to tell a certain pirate that they are here, we've tracked them down. anyway, before all that can happen, they see a mystery ship seen drifting with no crew, and the captain, he wants to board it. No signs of damage, no signs of life, no signs of anything. So nearly everyone gets on board and starts looking around the ship and checking all of that out, and then eventually they end up down in the hold, and in the hold they find one room, and the room is locked, and locked from the inside at that. How very peculiar. So with that in mind, do they open it? Do they? And they did. And what they did was found some people inside who were very gaunt looking and all the rest of it, and they said, oh yeah, we were starving, we were, you know, there was a plague, and all these bad sort of things happened, and after sort of talking to them for a while, they started to realise that these people actually weren't alive, and that they were corpses, and that they're actually lying down and all the rest of it, and they're not actually there speaking to them. So it was like this weird transition, this kind of like 1-2 layering, and okay, you're not actually standing there talking to me, are you? You're lying down there and you're actually corpsey. So everyone was freaked out, and they were like, get out of here, run! It was a real Abbott and Costello moment, I tell you. And they all legged it back to their ship, and then they realised, wait a minute, that's a plague ship. Oh dear, that means we might have the plague. So, you know, Karak started doing instantly a spirit healer tests and starts monitoring people, and he picks up that pretty much everyone has got something new contracted about them, but, you know, it's not really presenting symptoms yet, and so they don't know what it is. Anyway, it carries on, and as it goes on, they get back to their ship and carry on their journey. They're really, really worried. What have we contracted? And then suddenly a pirate ship appears on the way, on the horizon, and it turns out to be Scarbelly, the Talbashov pirate, and his crew. They've trapped the ship down. Now, do you remember how the group really peed him off? He's come for revenge. And they were loading chains and coming in from a distance. And now what the group did, with really quick thinking, they decided, we are going to hide. Help back up our story. We were never here, right? So Karak uses his cunning engineering tests and takes a bunch of barrels, empties them, so all the contents, empties away, right? And they all jump into the barrels, tip them upside down, and tie them to the ship, floating just off the ship. And eventually they get boarded. They don't put up a fight. The guys are in the barrels, upturned, tied, rigged to the ship, sort of thing, so that it's upturned, so it's got some air in it, hidden away, all the party. And Scarbelly's searching the ship, looking for them, and the guys are trying to sort of bluff them and say, look, we don't know of anyone being here, we're just transporting it. You can search the ship if you want, but, you know, please don't hurt anyone, and this sort of thing. Scarbelly was sure that they were here. I mean, the contact had told them they were here. He hadn't actually laid eyes on them, but, you know, he was sure. So they decided to hide, and the gamble worked. Dre, that's Pete's shape-shifting elf mage, decided to turn into an octopus and help try and secure the crate things, the keg things, because the one with Chris's character Ashad started floating loose, coming free of its rigging, and they all started to take on water as well. But luckily the guys were going to start turning around and heading back to their ship, scratching their heads thinking, oh, this is all rather strange, isn't it? But Tanadil had worked his way round the water and climbed up onto their ship, done some amazing stealth checks, and managed to work his way into the powder room, right, where all the cannons were. Yes, these are the first people with cannons! Gatlock Canary powder, whoa! Yes, oh yes. And he was looking at it, all the powder and the cannons and things, and thinking, I could rig this up. And then realised, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to kill myself. I gotta get out of here. And then he realised the ship was actually departing. They were actually pulling away from the merchant vessel, and he thought, now they're taking me with them. Oh dear. So he had to then stealth all the way back out and get back into the water and try and get back to the ship, and he did all that, and that was fine. Somehow, all the tests went right, and they all managed to get back to where they needed to be. Oh my lordy. So yeah, lovely. So then, I mean, they decided, well, they're going to have to head there anyway, and if they're bringing some sort of contracted plague thing with them, then so be it. We're just going to have to. They did see one other strange thing as well before they'd fulfilled their journey. Oh, the idea here, by the way, was if the pirates had have sunk their merchant ship, they would have been floating in the water, and they would have had to have made the decision, wait, there was a ship back there. It's not necessarily one we'd want to go back to because it was so creepy as hell, but it could have been a ship. And if they'd have stayed in the water too long, those were kappa infested. It's a new race of creature that I have designed, brought about, and I don't mean like the Japanese ones where they tip their head and the water falls out and then they're stuck in place. No, more sort of like nasty coral armoured men that have like poison claws and they slashy slash. Anyway, you'll be able to see all their stats for their created selves, who are replacing the fishmen from the book, because fishmen aren't very cool for this, are they? The explanation being that there's a few places where there are underwater lyrium veins, so they've mutated some of the life there and created these kappa. So anyway, off in the distance they see something quite strange. What they see is an airship. The airship seems to be floating across the horizon, and they go to try and get closer to it, and then it just seems to dissipate into nothingness. Oh, what the heck was that? Foreshadow. An airship? That doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem to fit the world. What was going on? Well, we'll find out in time. So anyway, they pushed on. They got here to the city of Blacksand, and because of the way they had travelled, they managed to avoid the gates of Port Blacksand. Explanation. So they didn't get to meet what was originally the two trolls, Crackjaw and Blackboil, even though they've been statted up for your use. So they headed straight to the Dragon's Tooth Inn. Didn't really do too much there, except speak to Gregor, and managed to speak to their contact at the inn, Halim Thrumbar. They were pointed in the right direction to the Singing Bridge to meet Nicodemus. They went there, and it was all creepy and nasty, and they decided to send Amelia first to try to, because he's an old man that lives alone, maybe the sight of a woman would be a bit more pleasing for him. But they did catch him in a better move. He only shouted at them, so that was nice. And they finally got him interested by saying who they were and this sort of thing. And turned them on to where Throg actually was. When, you know, he realised, oh, okay, well, you know, you're doing something very important. Fine. Sort of thing. Yeah, Ashad got pickpocketed and lost a gold 60, I think it was. So that was nice. Didn't realise that he'd been pickpocketed. Tanador had a waif, come up to him, a kid, with a little rat-like dog, and was asking for money by tugging on his belt and putting his hand out and this sort of thing. And Tanador ended up giving him a silver, but in a really intimidating way to make him bugger off. And so he made sure that no other repercussions happened or anything like that. I think he was expecting other things to sort of happen. Anyway, they eventually all met up again. Karak and who was it? Karak and someone else ended up having a fish supper, so that, you know, they kept out of the action as much as possible. They all ended up at Lobster Wharf. They found the pirates carrying the stuff in through the sluice gates into the sewers, because they found out that Zord and Frog lives down below in the old ruins of Carsopolis. The pirates were bringing cargo container chests and things with them, and the group managed to outsmart them, so much so that they convinced them that Karak was part of their employed team on the land based side, and that he brought these guys along to assist him. So they all managed to carry the stuff in plain sight along with them, and, you know, these are some dopey guys anyway, so they're carrying the things in, again avoiding combat in all these places. And it's, you know, it's great that they can avoid the combat, get away from all of that, so that's nice. And it meant that when the giant centipede attacked, again, it's been statted up, that they had the means to, you know, sit back and let the pirates and the fishmen, the Kappa, deal with the issue themselves. You know, they managed to drive them off because they were with them. They knew what to do, creating the banging sounds and all this. Now, it's not so bad actually when you have a team that's actually avoiding combat. I don't penalise their experience, and I give them experience for coming up with something clever to have avoided the combat, you know, because, you know, it shouldn't just be about rolling dice and stuff, should it? So all the Kappa are statted up anyway, and you can see that there are 3 types, and eventually they break off from the pirates. They manage to do that perfectly, and they come upon Sargon's lair. They meet a ghost who explains that if they help him, he'll help them get Throg. And so they decided that they do want to listen to what he's got to say, and he told them about the crystal that is at the Haidana temple. He said his form can't go there, and that they will have to get it back, and then he'll help them. He'll give them directions and all the rest of it. So they went and to go after the crystal, and so he told them about the secret entrance. So they avoided the Kappa guards, came in through the secret entrance, sent Tanadol in, because he's obviously the stealthy guy, rolled amazingly well on the stealth check. The priest didn't realise he was there. He sneaks into the room, gets right up to the priest, grabs him, yeah. At this point, Karak's flung a stone at the back of the guy's head as well, and has rendered him from consciousness. And Tanador grabs him, pulls him back to the entrance. They slit his throat, leaving no sign that they were ever there. I mean, they're like a team of ninjas. It's insane. And all the tempting things that were there. There was the sword there, the beautiful looking, like magical looking sword, and this beautiful golden goblet filled with sparkly water, and these other things, and they were all there, and the team were not tempted to touch any of it. And of course, had they touched it, then things would have started happening as per the book. You know, the thing is essentially trapped as an encounter, but no, they They resisted the urge. I really can't believe they managed to do it, either Tanith or Carrack. But no, they were in a real sort of serious, let's get business done kind of mood. So they just took the crystal and that was it. Backed back out through a secret passage. The Kappa never even knew they were there. Unbelievable. They got back to Sargon, let him touch the crystal. He materialized into a living person. And they were sort of shocked, and he said, look, I didn't want to tell you what it would actually do. I said it would free me. Well, it did in a way, but you might not have retrieved it if I'd have told you. And this sort of thing. He gives them the right directions to Throg's place, and so they head off that way. And and then he disappears in a big sort of like magical storm of darkness, and he's gone. But they've still got the crystal. He's also told them that Throg has a death spell. They'd already been warned about that by Lady Baranti, but he told them what colour the death spell would look like when it's being cast, and said, look, you can actually use this to reflect a spell back at the caster, so try that. Okay, so and then hope, if you can goad him to actually cast the damn thing. I know it's dangerous, but it's kind of what you need to do. I mean, you could take him down the standard way with a knife in the ribs, as they say, but yeah. Now this is again where the party were just absolutely amazing. Oh my god. They came to scene 13, the legions of Carsopolis. So this is where they see like the big Roman architecture under there, and the skeletons are standing guard out there, and they noted that there was 2 side passages as well, and they did exactly the right things. They looked at the fact that there were skeletons in armour, and they said, right, what are we going to do here? Well, for starters, we're going to block up these 2 passages, right? So Carrack's first move was to shape earth, and I made him do multiple rolls of shape earth to cast this spell to block up the left entrance and the right entrance. They were completely blocked up. After that, they set on the skeletons, after the skeletons kind of approached at them, and took them down. And then the group opened the doors and went through. At this point, all the clacking sounds of reinforcements had already come down the 2 passages, and the skeletons were stopped. Basically, this would have been an army of skeletons with no end of number, trying to wear the group down. But of course, they didn't get bogged down into that. They shut the door behind them, and inside, as the book has it, is a bone tyrannosaur, something nasty in the garden. So this has been changed to a skeletal dragon. You'll be able to see it in the file there. You'll see that it's got 3 attacks that become 1 less at each 100 HP and 50 HP mark. It's a fairly dangerous thing, but they took it down without too much problem, and took a bit of dragon bone with them as well. I mean, this is a real powerful group, yeah. And then finally they hear nothing in the very final door, so they have to open it and go in to the final showdown. There they meet Zorton Throg, and Zorton Throg starts to try and do his big evil monologue bit. I am this, you that, and your plan will not succeed. And they didn't want to let him finish his evil monologue. This is a bit of a shame, really. When it's part of the bad guy's staple. The evil monologue. So Ashad decided to interrupt it by firing a bolt at him, and he was like, "Oh, how rude!" Now, Throg, as you'll see in the file there, has a wonderful staff, the blister staff. So every 2 rounds it fires this crazy just pulse of like these blisters, and it just shoots and doesn't end basically, and just keeps going until it hits something, and then it splashes and corrodes it. So it's nasty. And obviously if it hits the guys, then bad things will start happening. They'll start melting away their armour, and pretty penetrating damage. And pretty much nearly all of them ended up getting hit eventually, by the thing. They entered into combat really quickly with him, disarmed his staff from him, and Karak had buried it with a Shape Earth spell. He did manage to retrieve it eventually in the end by putting them all into like a frozen lockdown, and then smashed the ground and managed to retrieve his staff that way. But you know, they were forcing him to use his spells to try and recover his staff and things, and he wasn't getting his stunt points so that he could do his staff recall stunt. So that was a bit of a sod for him. And yeah, targets covered in the goo also have a debuff called Sympathetic Enmity, so they risk taking the same damage that they've just dealt the user if they're covered in the goo. So yeah, the guys were taking damage that way as well. It was pretty much a good back and forth, but he was outnumbered, and that was the problem. Even though this guy is magic 10 because he's like 358 years old, they were still beating him down. And then he got to his 50% mark. Oh, and by the way, because Ash had really annoyed him and, you know, interrupted his monologue, he decided to want to kill Ash, and he was going to death spell Ash right from the off and put him in a dying state, like a super minus 40 dying state, which would be really hard to recover from. Minus 40 that needs healing back to 0 before you can even begin to start healing them, sort of thing. With a Constitution plus 2 rounds left dying in. And he managed to hide behind Karak, so he saw it, that it was kind of coming, so he didn't fire it. And they didn't know that Karak had the gem on him as well, but you know, he was the one carrying it. And yeah, at like 50% health, he went into phase 2. Boss went into phase 2. The portcullis opened up, and in came the zombie griffin. And he jumped up on the zombie griffin's back, and you know, he starts like staff firing and shooting at the group. But you know, Karak's crazy healing starts bringing them back into order again, and Ashad does go down from damage and the griffin sweeping in and doing things and the staff shots and all this, but Karak manages to get in and stick a revival on him and pull him back up into health again. And the guys are all then concentrating fire at the griffin, just going after the griffin, and you know, it's doing its supernatural shriek and flurry attacks and all of this, but it's not helping, because the group's just sheer ganking damage is taking the griffin down. And eventually it comes crashing down, and Tanador and Tanador's cat, that is now, you know, Harold, is now a full red lion, you know, so he's got it as basically his pet class kind of thing. Him and Tanador, they just tore its guts straight out, and it just fell down or split apart, and the frog's unseated from it, and he's trying to fight again. Anyway, during that, just before that period, he tried distracting them all one last time. He went for a gamble. Rather than trying to kill them, he tried stopping time momentarily and saying, right, all of you, I don't know why you're trying to kill me, you should look amongst each other if you want to see the real enemy. You've got Amelia here, you know, I've been in your dreams, I've seen what's inside your heads. Amelia, where does her loyalties lie, really, you know, with House Bronte, and do her intentions also lie somewhere else that won't be for the benefit of the group? You know, you have this Kunari with you, this Ashad, you know, he's an enemy, he's a scout from another country, you know, you can't trust him. You know, the day that the Kunari turn on you, he will be acting directly against you and your country. You know, you've got an Avar here who, you know, is a bull-headed and just thinks of himself, and most of the time that's when he's thinking at all. And classic enemies to Ferelden as well. And he went through and said, oh, you've got Dre, you know, he's got a secret dark passenger as well within him, and you haven't seen that. But then he left for the end, you know. And then finally, the worst of all is Karak, who has the most terrible, gravest, darkest secret and has been working against you. And the team didn't believe it, and he showed them like instant sort of like footage, overhead footage of Tigerhold being sacked, its people being murdered, and the apparent sight of Redhold troops going in and storming the place and finishing off the last of the Tigerhold people, and the other southern coalition states, where Redhold and the northern coalition states have now allied with the Chastened to take down the southern ones, those who haven't already sort of like resigned and kneeled and bowed their head. Tigerhold would be one of the stubborn ones, obviously, that wouldn't, so they had to be murdered. So that seems to have been going on. They don't believe the visions they were shown and any of this thing. They don't believe Karak could be acting against them. He said, yes, Karak has ordered this to happen. You know, he's the one that's been influencing the Elder Council. And how do you think the shaman and the leaders of Redhold have ended up dying? It's so that he can secure power and rise up the ranks. It's all him doing it, isn't it? And then he looks at Blacktail and says, you're both conspirational together. You know, if only you knew their secrets, they're the real enemy and all this sort of thing. But they still worked together to take on Throg. They didn't let it throw them. But Amelia and Tanador in particular, they passed some real strong empathy tests to realise that the look on Karak's face at that moment when he was revealing all this was like a sudden sort of horror, fright, shock. And they didn't like it because it was almost like Karak was justifiably worried about what Throg was saying. So, you know, that made them so very suspicious of their own teammate. But they got on with the fight, they carried on, and they took him down heartlessly, you know, professionally, mercilessly. And then with Throg down, Tanador looks to Karak and says, look, is there anything we need to talk about? And Karak said, well, we need a lot more mead than we have on hand if we were going to have a chat. And that's kind of where it ended, with the group coming away from a victory that felt strange, with some of them considering the things they've been told. And truly, maybe Throg's actual damage isn't necessarily what he could have done through his spells and all the rest of it, but just in that which he could utter to the group, and what sort of disturbance and cracks in the vase of its normal unanimous design will this bring about. But the group's always existed in this sort of semi-fractured state, hasn't it, and somehow managed to just about lumber through. A group really wouldn't be able to get on that well, you know, just random people all chucked together and forced to go out on an adventure, and there's going to be personality clashes and problems like that going to happen anyway. So it's left a lot to think about, but Throg has been destroyed at last. They didn't end up letting him touch the crystal again. They were going to let him touch the crystal to rematerialise and then cut his head off, but they decided no, that's going to be too dangerous to risk trying to do that, so they took the crystal away quickly from him and left him stranded there, except Amelia came along with Amorthin and then cut the spirit in twine as well, and it sort of dissipated away out into the fade. Oh, one of the other things I just need to mention as well, because Laurie will be very cross with me if I don't mention it. Amelia did a great manoeuvre here to help change the tide of the battle, because and I didn't even mention how the killing blow even came about. We'll just cover that really quickly, because basically Throg had like all these armor things up, like a kind of advanced rock armor and this crazy arcane shield, so he was like bouncing all this damage off of him. It was things hitting him that should have killed him a long time ago. And Amelia came along and did this huge debuff thing that Templars do, and just debuffed all these magical effects off of Throg and keeping him debuffed. And they kept the damage coming on him, which took him down, or they would have had so many problems. So they're so lucky they had a Templar tank there, so lucky. And right at the very end, Karak was hiding behind Ash, so they worked it that way around. Ash goaded him to attack. He was charging his death spell, fired it. Karak was positioned behind Ash, holding the gem just under Ash's arm from behind, and he poked it forward to the front of Ash suddenly, and as the spell was coming in, it hit the gem and fired back at Throg. Of course, hit him, so he died from a death spell, his own death spell. That's how it was done. So yeah, very clever positioning, very good group. And sometimes you could see like all the well created mobs and ideas and scenery, scenarios, and all these things get put together and maybe get passed by some brilliant play, but you can't punish the group for that, and you can't think, oh, I have to try and kill someone. You just have to say, oh, really amazing group, don't be scared to throw really hard challenges at them in the future. Kudos to what they've managed to pass up to now. Amazing adventure group, and to have got Throg down with the sheer ease and to have flown through this thing in one whole session was a tremendous effort. So where does that leave the group? So in amongst all their potential new fractured state, they also have to go off and do another adventure in Black Sand, and that will be the Black Sand book. Now that we'll see that in an upcoming, but that is another Age to Fighting Fantasy conversion. So we'll be covering that in the next video. I'll look forward to running that, and there's a few more sort of things where even some of the people that know the content of the book will be interested in how I might have changed it, obviously for the Age system and for Thedas. Yeah, I'll look forward to run that, and even though there were ones, get out of Black Sand as fast as you can, they'll be doing at least this one last thing. And of course it leaves us with one last question. Has Black Sand now contracted this horrible plague? Are they all going to be dropping like flies? The funny thing is, those that were hit by the blister staff are now free of the plague. It's overrode it and killed it off. But there are still a handful of them that have it still, a few of them, about half the team. How's it going to present itself in upcoming missions and things? We shall have to see. But until next time, I'll see you at the table.